I want you to imagine your favorite superhero. Let's pretend it's Superman, right? Now, when you go to see a Superman movie, you're expecting to see an incredible story arc about a man who realizes that he is more than just average. And as a matter of fact, he has something inside him that sends him on the hero's journey, right? But I want you to imagine a different version of the Superman story where he discovers he has this power inside of him, but instead he is told, no, you're not going to amount to much. In fact, you're not even a good person. You're not going to be a good superhero. And because of that, he lives his entire life thinking he's a bad person and he never amounts to anything. For me, that's actually a great deal of what I see happening with the Jewish journey. As a matter of fact, I myself have been called a bad Jew many a times. And growing up, I came to accept it. I came to say to myself, you know what? Yeah, I'm not one of those guys. I'm not one of those guys who wears the kippah. I'm never going to be one of those guys who prays every morning and does all these rituals to appease this idea of God. That's not who I am. But I immersed myself because I did love being a part of my community. And upon my interactions in the community, I discovered that I am indeed a good Jew just by being good to other people. What a concept. In order to be a good Jew, you be good to other people, but that's not what it takes to be a good Jew. It's just what it takes to be a good person. So then why am I called a bad Jew? Well, there's a few different interpretations of that phrase, bad Jew, right? If a Gentile is calling a Jew a bad Jew, it's most likely because it's an anti Semitic attack, right? Which is probably why a lot of you clicked on this video, is because you're concerned. Wait, what is this anti Semitic video doing on the internet, right? Trust me, this is not another act of anti Semitism. I am Jewish. I'll get to that in a second, right? There might be the other way of looking at a bad Jew, as you might be an average Jew who is watching TV, and then you come across a Bernie Madoff type of character who just got caught for doing a white collar crime. That's a bad Jew. I don't want to be associated with him. And then there is the other interpretation of bad Jew. And this is actually, out of all three types of bad Jews, the worst tragedy to come to our people. And that is when a Jewish person looks at the way that another Jew practices their faith and says, you're a bad Jew because you don't practice Judaism the way that I practice Judaism. Your Judaism is inauthentic to my Judaism. If that's a relatable instance to you, it means that you've experienced something that needs to be destigmatized. As a matter of fact, this concept of bad Jew doesn't exist. We as a people are one, the way that God, Adonai, is one. And with that oneness, with that wholeness that we have, while we are small in number, we actually are even stronger. And this is my life story. And by the way, here on the Bad Jew podcast, I'll be challenging all of my guests to telling their life story in 4 minutes. So I myself am challenging myself to tell my entire life story in 4 minutes. So wish me luck. Here we go. I was born in Chatsworth. I grew up in Thousand Oaks. I was bar mitzvahed at Temple Etz Chaim, which is a conservative synagogue. And while at that conservative synagogue, I learned Hebrew and learned a few skills and learned how to embrace my identity. I also, at a young age, began to experience my first moments of anti-Semitism. These little events where people might call me the stupid Jew, the little Jew. I've even been called a as early as 15 years young. Way too young to be called anything of the sort. And as I grew up, as I was facing different forms of anti-Semitism and just learning about my identity, still one thing remained true, is that, you know what, I don't think I'll ever grow up to be that guy who wears the kippah every day, that guy who prays in the morning, right? Now, when I got to college, I partook in Hillel. I was a volunteer and an intern for Hillel. I was a brother of AE Pi to the day I die. Now, interestingly enough, when I left San Francisco State, when I had graduated, I actually had another contribution to that specific community post grad, and that was that I actually entered a lawsuit that later became known as Volk versus CSU Board of Trustees. This was our lawsuit against San Francisco State for its systemic anti Semitism that spread. And unfortunately, there were a lot of instances that include the mayor of Jerusalem, Mayor Nir Barkat, that we had to confront from legal matters. And in doing so, we won. It was one of the most proud moments of my life, and I'm incredibly grateful. It's probably the closest thing I have to a claim to fame when it comes to my place in the Jewish thought leadership world. By the way, want to confront that right now. I do not consider myself a Jewish thought leader. I consider myself a Jewish student. That and that only. I am not an expert by any means. Now, where I'm at, in the last 5 years, I was introduced to an Orthodox organization known as Torah. And within Torah, I was exposed to these moments where I became, you know, where I had emotional awakenings. And so, in short, I went on this amazing Israel trip in July of this year, 2022, and my life was changed. Not only did I meet incredible people on that trip, and not only did I have amazing, if not hysterical moments on that trip, but I had emotional breakthroughs that made me realize there was something missing. And one of the things missing was my neshama, was my spirit, was my attachment to Judaism that connects to my soul. And now that I have that back, I am practicing. I do certain things in the morning. Like I rap tefillin. That album art that you saw for this podcast is not how I rap tefillin, trust me. But I rap tefillin in the mornings. I do pray. I do wear my kippah. I don't eat full on kosher. I eat kosher style, which is very interpretive depending on which Jew you're speaking to. But what's amazing is that now that we understand that I practice Judaism a certain way, you can understand that I don't actually identify with any denomination of Judaism. And that's where my identity as a Jew becomes a bit muddled. And at first, when I came back from Israel in August of 2022, I was actually very concerned. Like, oh my God, does this mean I'm Orthodox? Am I conservative still? If I'm not doing certain things, is that a bad thing? And I was really concerned about being a bad Jew. And then it occurred to me, these labels are American made. These labels are arbitrary, and I'm still finding my meaning in life. And so practicing that kavanah, or that intention from the Kabbalistic perspective every single day, made me realize that no, my connection to God is authentic. It doesn't matter what others say. As long as I'm learning, as long as I'm growing, I am a good Jew. And I'm doing good things for my community. I am trying to practice tikkun olam wherever I can, but I'm also practicing a sense of tikkun hamadot, self-improvement, self-growth. And if that's not relatable to anyone who is watching this, then this podcast is not for you. But if you are watching it, it means that you're probably a YJP like myself, who is trying to grow, who is trying to learn, who is trying to understand how to connect with Judaism, what is comfortable. Guess what? Not all of Judaism is comfortable. On that Israel trip I described, I wasn't comfortable 100% of the time, but it was worth it. I was introduced to all these new ideas that changed my life, that made me rethink how I looked at Judaism. I used to believe there was no such thing as free will, and now I believe there is such a thing as free will. That's how radical of a change I made by simply asking questions. And so on this podcast, you can expect me to ask questions to Jewish thought leaders from across the world to get deeper into understanding what is Judaism about. And I'm not going to be asking questions that you see on a lot of other podcasts. I'm going to be asking direct, confrontational, even edgy questions that ask and confront everything. I am here to question everything. I'm going to question God. I'm going to question politics. I'm going to question our place in this world. I'm going to question the different denominations of Judaism. I'm going to be questioning people's values. Nothing is off limits here on this podcast. And I want this to be a safe space where people can grow and ask those kinds of questions. So, being said, if anything relates here, I want you to feel inclined to reach out to me on badjewpod@gmail.com. And I also want you to go ahead and stay in touch with us through Instagram and on TikTok. And there you can follow us at Bad Jew Pod. Very simple. In this space that we're creating a safe space to practice Judaism how you feel fit. And in doing so, I want you to feel comfortable asking anything. because there are a lot of spaces out there that are just too judgmental to feel safe asking questions. Here on this podcast, on this forum that we're creating, we're asking everything. 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 Did I mention we're going to be asking everything? We are going to be asking everything. And in doing so, it's an accepting community of all denominations, however you look at that, the word denomination. And we're going to be exploring what Judaism is together, because that's what good Jews do. And I know you're a good Jew. My name is Chaz Volk. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really appreciate you giving us a chance. And with that, be sure to stay tuned. Also, interesting question, kind of random. Do you like trap music?
Shalom.